You are about to participate in the most ambitious culinary experiment ever imagined.
This competition is going to test everything.
Adapt quickly to anything. I mean anything. The wildest day of your life starts right now.
All new 24 and 24, Last Chef Standing. Sunday night at 8 on Food Network. Stream on Max.
This episode is brought to you by Bumble. So, you want to find someone you're compatible with, specifically someone who's ready for a serious connection, totally open to having kids in the future, is a tall, rock-climbing Libra, and loves rom-coms with vegan pizzas on Tuesdays just as much as you do. Bumble knows that you know exactly what's right for you. So whatever it is you're looking for, Bumble's features can help you find it. Date now on Bumble.
Hey, what is up? And welcome back to another episode right here of the Husband Coach's Corner. I'm your host, Chris, and today we're talking about patience and how it is the key to ensuring that your marriages are long-lasting and fulfilling. Now, if that's something you want to learn more about, then you got to stay tuned. Before we dive into that content, though, I do want to make you aware of a few things. If you want to go deeper in your marriage and your skills of becoming the husband that your wife deserves, then check the description box or the show notes below. Join me over on Patreon, and I will help you go deeper in your marital journey, as well as becoming the best husband that you possibly can be for your wife. And then lastly, if you want to get a hold of me and you're not a member of the Patreon page, then you can send me an email, husbandcoach2020@gmail.com. Now, let's dive into the episode and talk about our first aspect, right? And that is the role of patience in marriage. So I think we're all familiar with what patience is, and I hope I don't have to overly express the importance of it, but let's talk about the role of patience. And I think it's going to become clear of why patience is actually important. So the first idea here is when we're patient with our wives, we allow them to make mistakes. We allow them to do things that may not be the most advantageous to our marriage. Now, let me put a really short message in here that I am not saying that we should allow our wives to do things that are adulterous or anything of that sort. But, you know, if she happens to run out of gas driving the car, and run out of gas, stuck on the side of the road. She calls you in a frantic panic, and she's like, the car just won't go because I didn't get gas. And your first reaction should not be to yell and scream. It's probably more so giving her a little bit of grace. All right. So the role here is we're giving our wives grace and space to do things and not feel like they have to hide something from us or be afraid to tell us the truth. One of the worst things that you can foster in your relationship as the husband, because we're the ones that really do foster this, is convincing our wives that they can't come to us with the truth, because we're either going to blow it out of proportion or we're going to yell at them. We're not going to be patient with them. So that's one of the reasons, or one of the roles of being patient in the marriage and with our wives. And for all the wives that listen to this, you know, my hope and my prayer is that you are also patient with your husband, because let's face it, guys, we do some dumb stuff sometimes. I know, speaking for myself, I have done a number of silly things, and my wife has had to be patient with me. So don't think that we are prone to doing dumb stuff, all right? Because we're not. And we need our wives to be patient with us. So the role of patience in marriage, and you could see how that can go long lasting, right? If we are being given grace and we are giving grace, and our wives trust us that when something crazy like running out of gas in the car happens, They can call us and know that they're going to be taken care of. All right. Patience leads to trust and confidence, and trust and confidence leads to a long lasting and a fulfilling marriage. Now, that's not to say that we can't, that is not to say that we cannot go and address the issue that we're having with our wife if there's a problem. Okay. There's a way of dealing with that, but at the first contact of the issue, we should be patient with her so that way we can let those things kind of develop as they naturally do. All right. So that leads me into my next point, which is the benefits of practicing patience. All right. I've already talked about a little bit that when we're patient with our wife, it brings to that confidence and that trust in our relationship. But the true benefit, if you will, for what patience does in a marriage is it allows both of us to slow down. Situations happen really, really fast. They happen rapidly. They happen spontaneously in some cases. And when all of the emotions are flowing, it takes a very wise and a very strong person to slow down and say, okay, wait a minute. Let's think this through. Let's talk this through. Let's work this out. We can. And that's why patience is so crucial in our marriage and in our relationships, because things happen and we need to slow down so we can really develop a plan of action to address whatever the issues are. And those issues could be numerous, right? It just depends on what it is that we have going on. So the benefit of practicing patience is that we can slow down. But being patient also demonstrates empathy. Now, I did a full episode on empathy and why empathy is so important. But in very simple terms, when we are empathetic, that means that we are approaching the situation from the same lens that our wife is approaching it. And when we can do that, when we can slow down and we can say, okay, what is my wife going through? Let's go back to the scenario of the car running out of gas. What is my wife going through? She's concerned that she's going to be stranded on the side of the road, and the only way that she can get out of this is with help from her husband. That's what, and I could be overgeneralizing it, but still, let's assume that that is the perspective that our wife is going through in that scenario. Well, when we're patient with her, it allows her to, one, you can talk it through with her and help calm her down before you come up with a plan to get her out of the situation that she is in. One thing that I will tell you is in circumstances like that, husbands, hear me well. You do not need to patronize. You do not need to be sarcastic. What you need to do is figure out what the concern is with your wife, and you have to do that in a very calming way. Because and I'll speak for my marriage and with my wife, when she gets into a hysterical mode, if you will, I know that I can't just yell at her. I can't be upset, because that's adding gasoline to a fire that's already burning 50 stories high. All right. I don't need to do that. Instead, what I need to do is take a second to assess what's happening, see it through her lens, and say, okay, I get it. Here's what we can do. And in the situation that I'm talking about, she, if this were my wife on the side of the road, which, by the way, this has never happened to us. So this is just a hypothetical situation. All right. But we can imagine that our wives would feel vulnerable. And when we feel vulnerable, it is not a comfortable feeling. Like, we don't like feeling vulnerable. No person likes to feel vulnerable. And especially if you are vulnerable in a environment that, even if it's known to you, maybe you're only 5 blocks away from the house and you could just get out the car and walk home. But when your car is stopping on the side of the road and you have to, work through that, you feel vulnerable because something just didn't work the way that you expected it to. This is the same way with car accidents or anything else of the sort. This is why we have to be empathetic. All right. I don't want to get off too far down the rabbit hole on that one, but this is why we have to be empathetic. We have to see the thing from our wife's point of view, because there is a reason that she is feeling the way that she is feeling. All right. And, you know, without being all touchy feely, we need to first figure that out, understand it, or at least observe it, acknowledge it. And then we can go into the how do we resolve the matter. All right. The other reason that this is beneficial in the relationship is really that it brings understanding between you and your wife. All right. This goes back to that trust and confidence thing. When we take the time to slow down and say, okay, hey, let's talk this through. I'm seeing it through your lens. Your wife gets that you understand her. And every opportunity that you get to practice patience with your wife is growing your marriage in a very strong way. Stronger than if you were to spend 50 hours in therapy. Stronger than if you brought her a rose every single day. Because you're dealing with real life situations as they come up. And your wife knows that when real life happens, she has a husband to count on. And if there's anything that our wives want to have and be like founded in or solid in, firm in, whatever you want to use as the adjective or the metaphor here, is that she has a husband that's going to have her back. All right. When I was growing up, we used to call this phrase like, I'm gonna hold you down. And it's really this idea of I'm going to be your anchor. And when the wind comes and the storm, wanes, I'm going to be here to keep you where you're supposed to be, to keep you straight. All right. And sometimes we tend to make this about one person or the other. This is really about both of us, right? I need my wife to be my anchor in some situations, just as she needs me to be her anchor in other situations. There's strengths and weaknesses, and my wife complements me very well. We complement each other very well. And that's ultimately what being patient will allow you to decipher. What can your wife do that you can't do, and what can you do that your wife can't do, and how do you guys work through that? So if you're younger in marriage or earlier on in marriage, or maybe this is like your second, third marriage, whatever it may be, take some time to be patient so you can really build out who is strong in what areas, and then you start to work as a team. You start to work as a team. And when you are seeing each other from an empathetic standpoint, you are going to grow. But it all starts with the husbands leading in that segment. Now that we know the role of patience in marriage and the benefits of communication, empathy, and understanding between the two spouses or the spouses, let's talk about the actionable steps to cultivate patience in the marriage, because I've given some ideas, but let's really dive into how can we actually do this patience thing. All right. So, and we'll go back to our scenario of the car being broken down on the side of the road. So we've already figured out the empathetic aspect of our wife. She is not feeling comforted. She's not feeling safe. She may be in a vulnerable situation. She doesn't feel like, things are not going her way. She calls you and she's hysterical. She tells you, hey, the car, I ran out of gas. I'm on the side of the road. And she is just freaking out. All right. This is where we start to take our action steps. All right. So the first one is you have to ask her, are you okay? Right. So the first question, whenever there's a situation, you should always phrase it with, are you okay? Is there an immediate threat? Is there an immediate concern? And if that's not applicable, then you can skip past this step. But the very first thing is, what dangers lie around you that we need to address first? All right. Because you have to establish that comfort zone. All right. Now, if it's something like, okay, I spent all of the money that we were supposed to take on vacation. All right. Very upsetting. But you could probably bypass is there a danger of spending the money? All right. Obviously, it's going to impact your vacation. You could probably, deduce that from the idea that the money was set aside for vacation. But you don't have to ask the question, is there a safety issue that we need to address first? All right. Because we always have to address the safety issue first, no matter what. All right. Once you've gotten past that, you can either take the discussion towards addressing the safety concern and not even worrying about the gas. You see how that works? Being patient allows you to really start to work through what is the challenge, what is the situation. So in our scenario of the car, the safety concern, let's say our wife says, no, there's no immediate danger. You say, okay, great. How far away? And then you start to work with her through the situation. So you ask questions. How far away are you from the nearest gas station? How far away? Where exactly are you? Right? We should probably pinpoint that. Where exactly are you? And if you know the area, then maybe this is an opportunity for you to jump on to Google Maps and kind of get a ballpark of where your wife is, whatever the case may be, right? But now we're starting to go into specific questions about the situation that your wife is in. Again, I'm not addressing the gas issue. Even though she told me I ran out of gas, I could very easily respond with, well, you should have just filled up the tank. You see, like, that's not being patient. Instead, what you want to do is start phrasing questions that helps her get through whatever the situation is. One of the worst things that we can do as husbands is give the solution, because our wives don't want us to give solutions all the time. There are times when they want us to, and they'll say, hey, I need help with answering this, or I need you to solve this for me, whatever it may be. But most of the time, what they really need our help with is walking through the solution, all right, or getting to the solution. Now, you obviously have to do this within reason of whatever the circumstance is, but we've already established there's no immediate danger. So now we can start to develop a plan of getting her out of that area. All right. Now we work through and we figure out, like, okay, I'm only 15 minutes away. I'm going to come and pick you up. All right. Now, here's what I'll tell you. All right. In this scenario, you have to know your wife. Some people would say, well, I should go pick up gas first to put gas in the car, and then she can drive away and get her to a gas station. But if you're a certain amount of time away, and you have to know your wife, is she going to be okay waiting that time, or does she need to see her husband? Because again, the reason we're doing the patience drill and being patient with our wife is to build that trust and confidence. So if you are going to show up, my recommendation is you go get her, you go get the gas together, and then you come back. I know that sounds ridiculous. It sounds like it's one of those things where it's like, well, this is just silly. I should just go and pick up the gas so that way I only have to make one trip. And you're not wrong, right? That is probably the most effective or efficient use of the time, but it is not going to be the most effective, because your wife is still, even though she may be calm and she knows that there's going to be an answer, or, there's going to be some form of reprieve soon, you have to get her to that reprieve first, and then you can solve the problem. Okay. Trust me on this, but you also have to know your wife, because some wives, they may just call you and be like, hey, I ran out of gas. Can you come get me? And if that's the case, then it's like, hey, I'm going to swing by the gas station, pick up the gas, and then they'll be like, all right, yeah, whatever. So if that's the scenario that you're in with your wife or, the circumstance, then so be it. You're good to go. All right. Now you have to gauge, obviously not every situation that requires patience is going to be running out of gas on the side of the road. I just use that as a scenario to kind of work through and to demonstrate how we can be patient. But the goal here, no matter what, whenever there is a situation that would trigger you or a situation that would trigger some form of sarcastic response, or your wife does something and it's like, man, that was so stupid, right? And guys, we could be honest, that happens. All right. I'm not calling my wife stupid, but there are some things that it's like, how did you miss that? How did you do that? And I have to be patient with her and say, okay, hey, here's what's going on. Is there an immediate issue or immediate concern to your safety? No? All right. So what happened? What is the issue that we're having? And I'm seeing it through her eyes. Like, how did you get to this? And then we start resolving it from there. And when you can do that and you go through all of those steps, and it happens really, really fast, right? Happens really fast. But when you can do that, you are going to grow your marriage. You're going to grow your trust and confidence, and ultimately your love and intimacy with your wife. All right. Because the more that your wife can trust you, the more intimate she will become with you. And again, intimacy is not sex. All right. Sex is sex. Intimacy is the longing to be with you. Okay. The deep desire to be in your presence, the deep desire to get to know you more and to know more of you. Okay. That is what intimacy really is. It's not sex. Now, I've said a lot in this episode, and patience is a challenging thing. All right. So here's what I want you guys to do. I want you to be hypersensitive to how you respond when your wife does something. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be something positive, right? She cooked you a really good dinner. All right. I want you to be hypersensitive to that, because the more aware you are to the things that are happening and you vocalize them and you talk them through with your wife, the easier it's going to be for you to be patient with your wife. But if you wait until something bad happens or something crazy happens, and then you have to practice being patient, it's likely not going to work the way that you would expect it to. So my recommendation to you is be hypersensitive to everything that your wife is doing, good, bad, indifferent. And not all of those situations are going to require you to practice patience. But when you get to a point where you have to practice patience because you are frustrated or you are trying to go do something else, but your wife needs you to do something, one of the things, or one of the areas where I practice patience in my relationship with my wife is I do spend a lot of time in my office for making content and doing things of that sort. But my wife, just outside of that door, and if you're listening to this, obviously there's a door to the room that I'm in, but just outside of the door, my wife, she likes to open the blinds to our front door because my office is situated towards the front of our home. And I can hear her, and she likes to have conversations. Just on the other side of the wall, and these walls are very thin, is a set of stairs. And those stairs, I can hear my wife talking to my girls, and sometimes she yells, and it doesn't always get edited out in the content. And one of the areas where I have to be patient is knowing, okay, my wife is going to take care of the home. And that's what she's doing. She's trying to do what she does normally in her routine. And we have talked about it a number of times, but it still never fails when she does make some audible noise and I cut it out of the shows, or any of the other content that I create for some other interest that I have. But the point that I'm making here is I know that it's going to happen. And see, when you know that something is going to happen, you can pre-decide. I'm actually listening to a book by Craig Groeschel called Think Ahead. And one of the 7 things that he teaches in this book is when you're thinking ahead is to pre-decide. And I have pre-decided that whenever this happens, I'm just going to pause in the recording. So that way, when I come to edit, I know where that issue is. I can cut it out and it's not a problem. And I never even have to have this discussion with my wife because I pre-decided that I'm not going to allow that to upset me or frustrate me. Instead, I'm just going to determine what my actions are when I'm met with this situation. So my question to you is, what do you need to pre-decide in your marriage when your wife does something that will test your patience? So I'm going to leave the episode there. And I know I said a lot, and I really do want you to think about that. What is your pre-decision that you need to make today in order to be sure that when your wife tests your patience, that you can perform because you already know what it is that you need to do or that you're going to do. All right. So hopefully you found some value in today's content. If you did, please interact with this content on whatever platform you are listening to this on. And if you're on Spotify, then consider following, and you can check out the video podcast version of this. Send me an email over at husbandcoach2020 at gmail.com if you have questions, concerns, whatever, or my favorite, topics that you would like me to cover on this podcast. The more that you provide me feedback on what it is that you are struggling with or that you would like to get some help with in your marriage, then just send me a note and I will do my best to create a episode that would help with that. So until next time, I want you guys to find a way to love your wife every day. Peace.